Welcome back. Welcome back to the Detroit is Different podcast studios. And here in studio today is somebody that adds to a lot of the flair and culture of what we do in Detroit. Because if you know, Detroit is about the look, the feel. It's a Detroit essence to the culture. And that definitely goes into, as we know, the hair care and beauty industry beyond. It's a Detroit look. It's known, it's talked about. I think Cameron and Mace were even talking about it on their podcast about like, yep, definitely when you know women from Detroit, it's a style, it's a look, it's a feel, as we know. And in that, here in Detroit, in our own entrepreneurial spirit, we're not just the people buying the products and using the products, but we're also connecting in the business of creating and being in business as well. So, with that, in studio, someone that just opened a place where you, knowing you black folks, want to support black folks. Young black woman has been doing this for a while. Jessica Blair, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. Can't complain and happy to be here.
Definitely. Glad to have you in studio. Glad to have you in studio. So, we start this whole thing off talking about like origins and roots. But before we get there, your store,
Yeah.
where is it at? Where do people connect? And what's the best seller?
Yeah. So Jessica Blair Beauty is located in Rosedale Park, is on Grand River at 18724 Grand River Avenue. And I always tell people to be able to easily find it is directly across the street from the UPS store and the Amoco gas station. Can't miss it. It's right
Mhm.
across from there. Um, the top seller,
Yep.
oh, whew, it depends on who's buying. So
Okay. And that's a classic entrepreneurial answer.
it's I would say this for the natural hair care category, the brand TGIN, which is also black owned, does
Mhm.
very well. But for my people who wear like silk presses or weaves and things like that, hair bundles.
Okay.
So it depends whether you're a natural girly or whether you like to wear the bundles, the sew-ins, the wigs. That's why I say it depends on which client it is.
Okay. So with that, definitely we have to get into the story that brings you to the business. But classic Detroit is different starts your story in the city of Detroit. So what's your relationship with Detroit? Your family? How deep are you connected to the city?
Yeah. So it's funny because I'm actually not too far from where I grew up. I grew up near Linwood area, but closer to like Chicago Boulevard, that
Mhm.
section of Detroit on Blaine Street.
Mm.
Um, I was raised by my mother and father, and then at the age of 10, my father actually left to go back home. So what a lot of people don't know is I'm actually part Nigerian.
Mm.
And so yeah, growing up in this area, in this hub of Detroit, I spent a lot of time in the beauty spot stores with my mama. So I remember like going into the stores and I remember not seeing people that looked like me. Like from a very young age, I remember and I always was curious, like, how are other people telling me what I need for my hair, the type of product, how to use it, and they never look like me. And so as I got older and I started going to different beauty supply stores on my own, the experiences were like just terrible. And so I remember one experience specifically at this very, I won't say the name, but it was a really popular beauty supply store on like 7 Mile in Wyoming area.
Mm.
And I'm pretty sure people will guess which one. And so I was standing in there and I was waiting in line to purchase my stuff. And it was a lady in front of me who had a son who looked like he was probably about 2 or 3 years old. And you know, kids, they're curious. They like to touch stuff, they run, they jump, do all kinds of stuff. So the little boy just had a lot of he was very hyper, just running through the store. But the way the store owner yelled at him and the mom, I mean, simply off the kid really just running. It wasn't like he was breaking stuff. It wasn't like he was touching stuff. He was just running up and down the aisles. But it was the fact that it just showed me they had no respect.
Okay. So you jumped way further in the story. So I want to take it back some.
Okay.
Definitely take it back some, but we definitely don't like breaking up flows.
Uh-huh.
So we will pick back up with that, right?
Okay.
We will definitely pick back up with that. But you talk about a father that's Nigerian,
Uh-huh.
so I definitely wanna unpack that,
Okay.
but also a mom that's obviously from here.
Yep.
Okay, how many generations deep does your mom family stay rooted to Detroit?
Ooh, at least 3 or 4.
3 or
They've been
4?
here for a while.
Okay.
Yep.
Alright,
And they all were from the same area, so it was so many generations who grew up on Blaine Street.
okay, right there off Linwood.
Mhm.
Alright, Linwood and Blaine, definitely familiar with the community,
Yep.
as that's not that far from here,
It's not.
and I'm a Northwestern guy because technically this is a
Oh,
central
wow.
neighborhood.
Yeah.
That's one of those neighborhoods, well, like on Blaine, I think you could go
Either
kinda
or.
go to
'Cause
Central or Northwestern.
my mom went to Northwestern.
Mhm. So so with this, you speak of generations deep there, so that would be like 3 or 4, so that would be grandmother and great-grand.
Mhm.
Whereabouts do they come from before ending up in Detroit?
Yep. So, on my mom's side, my grandmother's family was from Georgia,
Okay.
and my grandfather's family was from Kentucky.
Whereabouts Georgia and whereabouts Kentucky?
So, I believe my grandmother's side was from Tignal, Georgia,
Mhm.
and Kentucky, I'm not actually sure which part. I don't know too much about my, grandfather's side as much as I know about my grandmother's side, because my grandfather passed away when I was about 4. So, I know some stuff, like, just from what they tell me, but me actually being able to ask my own questions and understand, like, the roots and stuff, I would know more about my grandma's side.
Okay. Alright, with that being said, I'm gonna say move the mic back a little bit. Alright, 'cause I alright, perfect. So, now that we get to that roots in that neighborhood in Linwood.
Mhm.
So your family being over there so long, that definitely connects you to so many other neighbors and people on the block. What do you remember about the community growing up,
Yeah.
just being in a neighborhood where your family has been there for forever?
It's funny because me and my mom were just having this conversation the other day about, like, how my upbringing, I guess, really molded me because so many people are always like, "How old are you? Like, how are you doing all of this and you only 20 something?" But the funny thing is, I'm always thankful for my upbringing over there on Blaine, because it was very community oriented. Like, it was still during that time where, like, neighbors were like family. And I feel like I kinda got the best of both worlds. So I don't know if you're familiar with, Cornerstone. It was a private school. They used to be right there at the corner of, I believe, Linwood, or it was on Joy Road. It was on one of them. I can't remember. But I went to Cornerstone.
Mm.
So it was like I got the best of both worlds. Like, I got the growing up on the block experience, but then I also got the private school experience, which kinda helped mold me and actually helped build a lot of relationships, with different neighbors and the kids and stuff because I was coming back home teaching them and showing them different stuff that I was learning in school and kinda exposing them to something different. So I'm very grateful for, like, my upbringing and, like, how community oriented it used to be, and I always talk about that, like, I wish we could kinda get back to how things used to be, like, where Black people were, you could go to any neighbor house on the block and everybody knew everybody. Now it's just so, like, almost just segregated.
So this neighborhood, you talk about your grandma growing up in that same community and being there. Did you grow up with your grandma being on the block too? Were you all like all how close in proximity of uncles, aunties? How much family was over there?
Let me tell you, my when I was this is the house, and then this is my house, and this is my grandma's house directly across the street.
Okay.
So growing up, the house I lived in, my grandma and grandfather lived directly, like, look out the front picture window, and that's their house.
Mm.
So we were that close. And then, like, the rest of the family kinda were just in the neighborhood, not everybody was on actual Blaine Street, but my grandma had one of those houses where everybody knew Friday, Sunday, everybody was at my grandma's house.
Mm.
So neighbors, the family, distant relatives, whoever, everybody came over her house because she used to do something called Fried Chicken Fridays. So everybody would come on Friday night, eating fried chicken, play cards, have fun. Like, she was literally the community house.
Mm. Okay. All right. So what did your grandma do? What did your granddad do in welcoming in all these people? And how many aunts and uncles? I gotta ask that question.
Yeah, so my grandma worked as a nurse, I believe, for Henry Ford for a while, a long, long time, and my grandfather was in construction.
Hmm.
So, they both had, pretty decent jobs, and they just were very community-oriented people. I mean, my grandma raised, I believe, 5 kids of her own, and then she took in, like, 3 that
Mm.
weren't her biological kids. So that house had, on any given day, probably had almost up to 15 people in and out
Wow.
of it.
Wow. Okay. And they had fried chicken Fridays. All right. How good was the chicken? I guess that's question number one.
Oh my, and people still talk about it to this day. Like, it's
Mhm.
funny because I'm 27 now, and people who knew me, like, as a little kid, like 3, 4, like, sometimes when they see me, they'll be like, "Your grandma still be making that chicken? Do she still
Hilarious.
have everybody over?" Because everybody knows, like, they knew Blaine Street was, like, that was where we going on Friday night. Like, how people go to the club or they go to the
Mhm.
bars and stuff, they was coming to my grandma's house every Friday night because they knew they was gonna have a good time, be around good vibes, and it was just real family oriented. Because, like I said, she was one of them people, didn't care who you were. I mean, if you good people, you good with her. So it wasn't, kinda how things are now where it's so much separation and just, it's just different.
Okay. All right. So welcoming in that much community, I'm guessing naturally that leads to a lot of people looking after you.
Mhm.
If you want to do anything, especially your grandparents' house
Yeah.
across the street, it's like you can't even sneak out.
No. You couldn't, but it did come in handy though, helping my mom, cause my dad, he worked, like, really, really long hours, so he was working maybe on any given day 12 to 14-hour shifts, so a lot of the time, it was just my mom with us, so having that support system really helped, having her be able to just walk us across the street, like, if she had to go do something or run errands or things like that, it helped.
Okay. So now that leads to the next question. Your mom, what did your mom do? And then I want to get into some of your dad's story.
Yeah, so my mom worked for Blue Cross for, like, 30 years.
Mm,
She just retired
wow.
in 2020.
Congratulations, mom.
Yeah, she held it down. So she just retired in 2020, but majority of my life she was at Blue Cross. She started off the Blue Care Network, and then she went to Blue Cross.
Hmm.
That was kinda her thing. And my dad, he has a very interesting story. So I guess I would kinda have to go back in time a little bit and then bring us up to the recent years. So, he came here on a student visa, and that's how he met my mom
I
in
was going to
college.
say, when did they meet? How did they meet?
He came here on a student visa. They both went to Western.
Mm,
That's how he met my mom, and unfortunately, he had never did what he was supposed to with his paperwork. So, he came here, he got comfortable, and, had started a family and all of that stuff, and I would say around when I was about 8 or 9, um, he had lost his job. So,
hmm,
all that time, he had got a really good high-paying job for some type of industrial company. They ended up moving out of state, and so because his paperwork wasn't right, that kinda messed him up, and he wasn't able to find, like, another job that was paying even remotely as much as he was making, during that time. So, at that time, his family started calling back from home, and they were like, "Oh, you could come here. You could make so much money. You could go back and blah, blah, blah. Just come here, get on your feet. We'll help you," and all of that. So, he listened to them, he went back home, and he called us immediately when he got home back to Nigeria, and he was like, "I was tricked." Like,
mm.
I pretty much was bamboozled. And so I don't know all the laws and stuff, especially at that time, but I know it was something where, like, the Nigerian council or whatever you call it, they pretty much put him on a 10-year punishment. So they basically said, like, "You can't go back to America in under 10 years."
Mm.
So off rip, I was about 10 when this happened. Off rip, I wasn't even eligible to probably see him again until I turned almost 20,
If he comes here, unless you go there.
unless I go there.
So, all right, which unpacks you just got into a lot of deeper understandings of some of the stuff that a lot of us are kind of like hearing the news about how different laws when it comes to migrants, immigration, and a lot of visas work within the United States of America because there are different levels of visas.
Yep.
And depending upon what you're doing, it's working visas. If you're working, it's a lot of school visas. A lot of people here, like your father, that do go to school.
Yep.
And depending upon what's happening, the political process, a lot of people definitely paying a lot more attention. It can have great impacts on what's happening with immigration because also it's certain amounts of visas that are released per year, uh, depending upon what's happening between in the nation and what's happening politically with that nation's relationship with the United States or whatever other nation that can impact a lot of stuff with immigration and migration. All of this, especially when you have families, are something that becomes very keen.
Yep.
Now, we get into the other layer, and we've had other Nigerian guests. Nigerian culture is something very rich, as we understand.
Yeah.
The first thing you definitely got to split is really the understanding, as we know, of cultures. We often in America kind of align with the concept of blackness, which really comes out of enslavement in a lot of ways. In colonial colonization, it looks different, but there in Nigeria, especially, you still have so many tribes. So Nigeria is split into many tribes, three predominantly. Igbo, I believe, being the most known tribe when it comes to a lot of Americans that interact with Nigerians. So that naturally leads to what's the lineage there with your family?
My dad was Hausa,
Ah.
so it's not as popular. And
Mhm.
the funny thing is, I really don't know too much, like many details. I
Mhm.
still try to learn as much as I can because my situation was a little different.
Mhm.
So my father actually passed away in 2018.
Condolences.
Thank you. So it's kind of like lost history
Mm.
because that was our only really connection to Nigeria or to know, like, different stuff about the culture or like how to get in touch with family. So I've actually never even met the
Mm.
whole other side of my family.
Wow.
The only person I knew was my dad.
Mhm.
So we don't even know like how to get in touch with them to ask questions or
As
say
of right
hi.
now.
Mhm.
As of right now, but we putting it out there,
Yeah.
and I'm telling you,
Yeah.
you'll be surprised, especially when we think of Hausa come into Detroit,
Yeah.
the community around. We know some folks around here,
Oh, well,
so
that's good to
let's
know.
uplift it. And then you're in some industry that really kind of goes in that art because the patterns, as uplifted in the Jennifer Crawford interview. Well, not Jennifer Crawford. I'm tripping. The Christina Glam Tech. Jennifer Crawford's done certain things too in this, but the patterns of the hair.
Mm.
So the braids, the patterns, the styles convey different things from different tribes as well. And different things that are happening of like this part of a person's life journey, what position they hold in the community, what's happening with the family. Like all of this is definitely plays out. And this is why, because like when you have a nation where it is so many different tribes, three predominantly in what we recognize as Nigeria now,
Yeah.
that plays out. So within this journey, as you talk about your really this is a connection where you know the lineage through your father and you're still discovering a whole lot now, so that just re-ingratiates you more to what's happening in the culture now, as far as you're coming up with a legacy that is so much more to find out, but also leaning into your family that's here and who you are yourself and with your own personality. So now I guess you talked about Cornerstone. After Cornerstone, where do you go to school?
Mhm.
And within that, what's your approach towards hair? What's your approach towards style?
Yeah. So I don't remember what year, but we ended up moving to Southfield.
Mhm.
So I did go to middle school in Southfield and I went to high school in Southfield.
Which one?
I went to University High,
Okay.
the one that was attached to Southfield High, but it's not I think they moved it now. It's its own school inside of Lathrop, but it used
Okay.
to be attached to Southfield High.
So it was like an academy-based school
Mhm.
inside of the school?
Yep.
Okay, what was the focus of
And
the
we had,
academy?
like, 2 hallways.
Okay, what was the focus of the academy?
So, it was STEM-based, if I remember correctly. We did a lot of, like yeah, it was really STEM, like robotics and math and all of the accelerated courses, stuff like that.
So STEM, and you're one of those students that was the product of it. It was a big wave, I would say maybe around the 2010,
Yeah.
moving a lot of students towards STEM. This is even before a lot of where we're at with tech now. So that's science, technology, engineering, mathematics. They've added STEAM, so they've added science, technology, art,
Mm,
engineering, mathematics.
okay.
With that, that movement was really big at one point, and that was one of the academies. Is that was also a movement where a lot of schools were taking on different academies to focus and center their curriculum around things. One of those STEM students. Were you interested in STEM, or was it one of those things where your mom was like, "This looks like a good program. Let's go to it."
You know, it's funny because I did not wanna go to university. I fought tooth and nail.
Mm,
I actually wanted to go to CAS.
mm,
So, it was funny because my mom, yeah, she was the one who kinda was like, "No, I've heard so many great things about University High School. You need to give it a try," and blah, 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 and I did not wanna go there. But once I got in there, and then once I got to Michigan State, I said, "Oh, thank you. Thank you for keeping me here," because, like, when I looked at my freshman year at Michigan State, I think I finished with, like, a 3.9, and it was easy to me. Like, it was like a piece of cake. But
mm.
that was because I was prepared from university, whereas some of my friends who went to some of the other schools, they were struggling freshman year, and when I got there, I was like, "Oh, this was cool." Like, it felt like I was still in high school just with a little tidbit extra layer, but it was a breeze for me.
Okay, all right. And that journey in STEM, what was it that sparked your interest, sparked your curiosity into that
Yeah.
world?
So, I think it's probably, like, growing up, you know, with other people probably instilled in me, like, "Oh, you should be a doctor. You should be a nurse. You should be this," and so that was kinda how I followed the science, the science, curriculum, because you know how STEM has all the different
Mhm.
tracks you could go through. So mine was always mainly, like, science courses and things like that, and so, like, even when I got to Michigan State, I started off pre-med,
Hmm,
then I switched to pre-nursing,
hmm.
then I finished with kinesiology.
Wow.
So it's funny because as I look back, I'm not even utilizing, like, really what all my background was. Like, I had never did business classes or anything like that at Michigan State. All of my stuff was literally medical related and science related, and I'm in a whole different, like, industry now.
Which leads me to say that your mother working from one lens in medicine and your grandmother working from another lens in medicine, was that part of the interest that you saw, or were you just one of those kids that was watching medical shows and had that curiosity as a kid?
So, I think for me, I've always had the personality and the spirit of, like, where I like help.
Hmm,
And so, even at a young age, like when my grandfather was sick, so I'm gonna take y'all back for a second. My grandfather had cancer.
hmm,
And so one day my mom came home because I spent a lot of time with my grandma when I was like from a baby up to 4 or 5. I spent a lot of time with them. And so my mom came home from work early one day and she saw me with a cup of like pills. And I was, of course, walking it to my grandfather, but she freaked out. She like yelled. She asked my grandma, like, why does she have this? Like, she's only 3 or she's only 4. Like, and my grandma looked at her and was like, she know what she doing. But my grandma had trained me to a point where I would help her take care of my grandfather who had cancer. I would literally take him his medicine, I would watch him swallow it, give him his water, and I would take it back to my grandma. So that was something, like, at a very, very young age that I guess kinda was instilled in me, and like I said, I had always liked helping people. So I kinda just went into I thought that was, like, what I wanted to do. Like,
Mm.
just I thought medical was like, "Okay, this is for you.
Mhm.
This is what you need to be doing." And then, of course, as time went on, I was like, all right, Jessica, you can still help people, but we gotta figure something else out because this is not your passion no more."
Okay. All right, and Michigan State. You go in the state. What was your state experience like?
It was great.
Hmm.
I loved Michigan State. I feel like it gave me, once again, the best of both worlds. It was very diverse. I met so many wonderful people. My academic advisor, still thankful for her to this day because I experienced like so many things during college, and I feel like my academic advisors who kept me together. I remember specifically one time where we were living, they had an issue where a fire had broke out, and so it was like all over the news. They were saying they were evacuating and all this stuff, and I couldn't get in touch with my mom. And so from the news, like where they were panning around the complex, it looked like our building. So I was just so happened to be in my academic advisor office when I saw the notifications popping up, and I started flipping out. And she immediately like searched the name of the place. She called the leasing office. She got in touch with them to figure out which building numbers were being impacted. But it's that kind of stuff. It was more than just academics with her that like really, helped me stay along. Because, sometimes you get an academic advisor and it's just, you know, they advise you on some classes, on some courses, and that's it. But when it came to personal stuff too, and like just talking to her about different situations, it really helped me. It's such a big school.
What's her name? Let's just shout her out.
Yeah, Jong Lim Yu. I don't know if she's still there, but Miss J. She goes by Miss J.
Mm.
Her real name though is Jong Lim Yu, and I don't know if she's still there, but just having people like that in such a large institution, coming from Detroit and then going up to Michigan State where it's not that many of us who look like us. At first I was a little overwhelmed. Like my freshman year, I'm not gonna lie. I got on campus when my mama was dropping me off and I'm looking around like what is this? Like,
Mm.
is this where I'm supposed to be for the next 4 years? And so I just so happened to get into this program. It was a STEM program, and that was how I met Miss J, and it carried me all the way through. And then I actually ended up doing the commencement speech
Wow.
for when I graduated from the College of
Wow.
Education. So
Okay.
she helped me.
All right. Commencement speech
Yeah.
and speaking to your class of
Mhm.
other graduates.
Yeah.
First off, that's one heck of an honor. So
Thank
kudos to you for that. And how did you go about even preparing that?
So funny thing, sometimes I laugh because I feel like I just be doing stuff and then don't even realize, like, what the results will be. I remember I was on the phone with my mom, and I was about to study for this exam, and I got an email because it was near time for graduation. This was, my last year, and they sent out an email, and they were like, "We're looking for commencement speakers. If you're interested, just write up something, whatever, whatever." And then you had to go, like, audition and all this stuff. So if I wasn't on the phone with my mom at that time, I wouldn't have did it. I just so happened to be reading her the email, and she was like, "Oh, you should do it." I
Mm.
said, "What?" Like, I thought it was the craziest thing. She was like, "You should apply." I was like, "Ma, like, be for real. I already got so much stuff going on. I'm trying to study for finals. And I'm not about to write no speech, and then I still got auditions, all these people. What makes you think they're about to pick me?" So it was one of those things. And after just talking to her, she's like, "Girl, if you don't just write something." So I listened to her, I wrote something up, I submitted it, and then they responded. And they were like, "We were really interested in your speech. Like, can you please come like audition, like come in person?" So I went, and then they sent me an email and they were like, "You were selected
Wow.
as the 2019 commencement speaker for the College of Education." And I still remember looking at that email like, huh?
Wow.
Like, I was in shock, actually.
So first off, kudos to mama for knowing that. See, mamas be knowing.
They do, so
Mamas be knowing.
yeah.
And she was like, go out there.
Mhm.
So I know she was definitely enjoying the speech as delivered.
Yep,
And also in the back of her mind, she was like, see,
yep,
told
yep.
you. All right. So what did you speak about?
I really just spoke from the heart. Like, I talked about things, though, that were relatable. So a lot of people that went to Michigan State. So I talked about, like, a lot of the challenges. I talked about overcoming. I talked about, I know everybody laughed at this part. I was talked about how people who go to Michigan State, they know how the bus system used to be. Never will forget Cata. And it used to be snowing. It'd be snow up to here. It'd be ice. And if you miss that Cata bus, like sometimes it'd be full and it'd go past you 3 times. So now you already late for class. You standing in snow. You standing in ice. You can't get on the bus because Michigan State campus is so big. So a lot of times it's like if you walk from one end to the next, it might take you an hour to get over there. So I talked about something specifically though that was relatable to no matter what their coursework was or major. I talked about that kind of stuff, like, overcoming something as simple as that. Like, you're literally standing in snow, ice, and sleet for 40 minutes or so trying to get over to a study session, trying to get to work, trying to get to class. The bus that went past you 5 times. Then you finally get to where you going, you late, now you getting penalized for this, or like you take an exam and you were a few points off and you really needed that GPA for something else. You're trying to get into a grad program. So it's those little things every day, like in college, that sometimes people, take for granted that you really overcame. And so I think the audience really appreciated that because it gave them the time to sit back and reflect, like, wow, like we all are sitting here with these grad caps on, but we never really realized everything, the life stuff that was happening, people who lost loved ones during college, the people who like might have failed a course and had to change their major and just all those setbacks that happened. But we all, made it to this point where we're now at graduation. And so you could kind of see like when they panned through the audience, like people was crying and like they were like clapping because, it was something that was relatable to all of us because we all have challenges, but we all had to overcome something.
And speaking of which, your father passes away while you're in college.
Yeah, so I want to correct that. I meant to say he passed in 2022.
22.
He got diagnosed in 2018.
Mm.
So 2018 was when he had a massive stroke.
Mm.
And that was while I was in college. He had that
Wow.
massive stroke. And I never forget when I got that. That's probably why earlier I said 2018 because that's always stuck in my head. Because I remember when I got that phone call that he had a stroke. And when I was talking to him, yeah, I had ever heard him sound like that. So that was when it really set in. And then because of where he was at in Nigeria, unfortunately, he wasn't getting the best treatment. And so by him going so many years untreated, that's when he passed away in
Wow.
August of 2022.
Condolences. And also another big event on campus that we spoke about on Detroit is Different before. You're on campus, Black student, PWI, predominantly white institution, during an election of Donald Trump. What was that like?
I will never forget the campus climate. It was such an eerie feeling. Like, when I tell you that next day, I remember that night when I was working one of the study sessions on campus, and it was like, I had never heard Brody Hall that quiet. Like, everybody know Brody used to be like the hangout spot, and I believe we were inside of, might have been Butterfield. I can't remember which specific hall, but we were in Brody neighborhood, and it was so quiet. I've never heard Brody to the point you could hear a pin drop. Like, that was where everybody hung out at. That was where, like, all the organizations would have, like, some of their meetings. It would just be, like, the happy place, a hangout place, but the climate that next day, people were just quiet.
Hmm.
They weren't fighting to get on the bus. Some of the buses were empty. It was just I had never seen campus look the way it did.
Hmm.
So, it was interesting.
Okay. So now that leads you to graduate and COVID-19 comes, right? And along this path, graduate, finding work, looking for opportunities, the world changes forevermore.
Yeah. So, I graduated in 2019. I started off working in physical therapy because my degree was kinesiology and health promotion. I started off in physical therapy, and then I also was working for a family who had a child that was hit by a car, and she was paralyzed from the waist
Mm.
down.
Mm.
So I was working there. Um, I ended up leaving because I got offered a good job, so I thought at the time was a good job. Then this was during the pandemic, right before it hit, February of 2020. I was offered a position with the state of Michigan, to work at one of the child psychiatric hospitals. Once I got in there, who knew the pandemic was gonna hit? But me being a new staff and being mandated, literally, I was working 14 to 16-hour shifts,
Wow.
like 5 days a week,
Wow.
back to back.
Whoa.
I had no life.
5 days a week, 14 hours?
Oh, let me tell you, it gets worse. So most people, and I know anybody who listen to this who has ever worked a second shift, they gonna understand. Second shift, in my opinion, is always the worst shift you can work, especially in the medical field. First shift is cool, and overnight is cool because like patients are asleep, it's calm. And then with first shift, majority of the time, depending on like what type of like for psych hospitals, especially with kids, they're in school during first shift. So you might only really have to have programming for them a few hours out of that shift. Second shift, you are there up with them from the time they get out of school, which is about 3 o'clock, until they go to bed, if they go to bed at 10:30 when you're getting off from your shift. So my shift was 2:30 to 10:30. Since I was being mandated, I was there from because I would always get to work early, so I would get there about 2 o'clock. So I would be there from 2 o'clock one day to 7 or a little after 7 a.m. the next day.
Mm.
And this was like this for months.
Wow.
Like I was getting mandated left and right, but that was because I don't know if it was a good thing or a bad thing, but I wasn't one of the ones who caught COVID. So because myself and a few other staff hadn't caught COVID, we were getting burnt out because at that time, if you said you had COVID or caught COVID, it was like you couldn't work for 10 days. They were doing that whole you gotta quarantine for 10 days or 14 days. So people were off work for almost 2 weeks.
Mm.
So it was the same handful of us. They just kept rotating out because they didn't have enough staff.
Mm.
So it was yeah. I think that's what made me wanna transition into something else because I could laugh about it now, but I told people, like, I literally thought I was about to turn into a psych patient. Like,
Mm.
being with psych patients for 16 hours a day, 5 days a week, I was like, I my mental health, it was literally draining me. And then when people started telling me, like, "You look different. Are you okay?" Like, when I started wearing it, that's when I was like, "Okay, yeah, I gotta do something different."
So during something like that, because you're just jumping right into the fire, dealing with that, you pivot out of it.
Mm.
But during that time, when did you recognize, like, okay, this isn't sustainable? And up to that, did you try any other forms of ways to deal? Because I'm sure it's other people saying, hey, this is a good opportunity.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh,
if you stay here, I'm sure they'll recognize this. Other
so
opportunities may present themselves.
funny thing, um, I pray about everything. And so when I started, like, when it was really weighing on me and I felt like I was starting to wear it where people was asking, like, "Are you good? Are you all right?" Like, when I was just mentally drained, I remember just praying about it, and I'm like I was on a midnight shift. Yep, I had got mandated. I was on a midnight shift, and I was just praying. I'm like, "Lord, like, I can't go out like this." Literally, I was like, "I cannot go out like this." Like, I done went to school 4 years for something a degree that I thought I wanted, but I just feel like this is not my passion no more. Like, and it sounded crazy, but I was like, I really just feel like I wasted thousands of dollars on, taking out student loans and doing all of this stuff for something I don't even wanna do anymore, and I just don't feel like I'm happy right now. And so that same night I went home, I still was praying about it. I'm like, I just need an answer, like, what is it that I should be doing? Like, I know I like to help people, but can I help people in another way? And so that next morning, when I woke up, I was about to get ready to go to work. And I don't know why, but it was like a beauty supply store just kept popping in my head. Like,
Mm.
it just kept popping in my head. And so I had one of those little journals like that you get from TJ Maxx that had a little cheesy quotes and stuff on them. But I'll never forget, it was on my nightstand and it said, "Write every moment." It was on the journal, on the cover of it. It said, "Write every moment." And so I got up, turned to the side of my bed, opened it, and it was like every thought that was just like erratically going through my head, I just started writing it in there about a beauty supply store, about different ideas that just started popping in my head. And I went on, got ready, and went to work. And so that same night, I believe, I don't know if it was that night I got mandated, but I did end up getting mandated again that same week. So that midnight shift, once all the kids were asleep, I put out that same notebook again and I started writing more thoughts and I started researching some of the stuff on my break, like, how to get into this industry and all of that stuff. And at first I got a little discouraged because it's a very gate kept industry. Is like and then I started thinking I was crazy because I'm like, why do you think you about to jump from this into something else, and it's about to be even harder to do this? And so it was just the craziest thing. But it was like once that popped in my head, it was like I felt like it was God telling me, like, no, this is what you need to do. And it might not be easy, but you're gonna figure it out. And I did. So
Well, congratulations on that journey, and it's starting from that space.
mhm,
So now I guess we get into the style and that incident. We go back to go forward a little bit
mhm,
in that supply store on 7 Mile in Wyoming that many people may know,
mhm,
and a strong influence, as we know, of Korean families that have galvanized a lot of the beauty and hair care industry throughout Black communities across America.
mhm,
There are different Black brands, especially in the natural hair segment, more and more emerging.
yep,
And many other communities that also have looked at, like, okay, how to enter this. Though we do know and recognize the brilliance of Black women, especially, have really created this industry becoming what it has become. So, you entering this market, what was already like your approach towards style and hair? I already see where you're at now. We met before, you're into that space. Like, what's your relationship with style,
mhm,
cosmetology, hair before
yep.
you get into the business? And now, how do you look at it?
Yeah, so before, it was just a hobby for me. I mean, it was something I just always was interested in, different hairstyles. I mean, I would go from curly wig to straight wig to sew-in to quick weave to braids to natural hairstyles. So it was something I was just always interested in, even like cosmetics, makeup, lashes, just something I always liked. And I remember it was a point where like people started asking me, like they would come to me for advice on like different hairstyles or how to do certain styles. And mind you, disclaimer, I've never been a hairstylist, but because of the different stuff I used to do on myself, people started coming to ask me, "Do you think this would be cute on me?" Or, "Can you help me pick out a wig?" Like, it was one of these things where my aunts and they will always ask me, like, "Can you look up some hair for me? Can you find this for me?" Like, they didn't even wanna try to figure it out for themselves, but I was into that kinda stuff, and
Mhm.
so, I'd be like, "Oh, yeah, I'll get you together. I have you looking nice." And, like, I know, like, your face structure is different than my other auntie, your skin tone is different, so this'll look good for you. You might like it on her, but it's not gonna look right on you, so I've always been very honest too with them, and so it was kinda one of those things where I went from, doing it as just a hobby, like, for
Mhm.
family, friends, and then actually doing it for the business.
Okay. So were you like one of those kids with like a lot of like the dolls that have hair and stuff like that, and you like dress them
Yeah,
up and all of that stuff?
and I can only imagine how many, dolls I got with, like, chopped up, uneven hair because I used to think I could cut
Work
hair.
a symmetrical style.
Uh-huh.
Messed up a Cabbage
I done got
Patch.
them cut up and everything else.
Well, Cabbage Patch is way before your day, but let's see what I don't even know. Let's
No,
see.
I had a Cabbage Patch,
For real?
surprisingly, and I was scared of it.
Hilarious.
I don't know why I was so scared of that Cabbage Patch, and if my family hear this, they gonna laugh because they still make fun of me to this day about this Cabbage Patch my mama had to hide in the back of the closet
That's
because
funny.
when they gave it to me as a gift, I cried.
That's funny. Okay, so so along with that, like I guess now they had and this would be your age too, the online games where you would style
Mhm,
the different I don't even know what you call that, but I had cousins that would do that
mhm,
all day, and
mhm.
I was like, I don't even know what's going on here. What
Yep.
what were those things?
I don't remember the name of the one I used to play, but I know they used to be on a the one I used to play was on a computer. I used to
Mhm,
play this game called Pet Shop, and it was another one because you could I remember styling the pets, and then it was another one with, like, Barbies
mhm.
that you could, like, switch the outfits, that you could put different wigs and stuff, but it was on a computer.
Okay. All right. So now getting into the business side of this,
Mhm,
and you already have one of the key elements in all forms of business, and that's information. You already got some information where you're not just Google searching, because obviously you know where to find some of the product where the others cannot find it.
mhm.
Now, seeing it from a lens more in business, what's your first approach towards starting the business?
Yeah, so in 2020, I really just spent the whole 2020 researching. So a
Mm,
lot of those midnight shifts that I was working at that psych hospital and then, like, on my breaks and stuff, I really was just doing straight research, on how to start it and, the different things on how to, like, file my LLC myself. Like, I didn't pay anybody to do that. I just researched it, filed my own LLC, searched business names to figure out, like, what I wanted to call it, different licensing. I just looked up the requirements in the state of Michigan, like, for sales tax and, just all that kinda stuff because one thing about me, I like to keep stuff in order. So I didn't wanna start off, the wrong way or not having my stuff in place because it was something I knew I wanted to do for real. So I made sure all the logistics were in place first. And then during that time, somebody had told me about Tech Town. And so I met with a few people from Tech Town, and then I ended up doing retail boot camp in
mm,
2021.
okay.
And I still to this day, I always talk about how much I appreciate having done Tech Town. That was probably one of the best investments for me because at that time, I believe it was like $500. I paid that, and then I was a winner, one of the winners at a pitch competition.
Mm,
So I had won 5,000. So I looked at it
cool.
like an investment, like,
Yeah.
ooh, I paid 500, won 5,000.
Yeah.
But some of that stuff I spent my grant money on is stuff that still has my business, like, where it's at today. So, like, for example, I started off Black Diamond Beauty Supply Company because I met with one of my textile advisors when I was getting ready to trademark the name. I realized there was a Black Diamond Beauty Supply Company in California with the same exact name, same logo, same branding, same color scheme. I mean, you would have thought we saw each other.
Mhm.
And so, because of that, I couldn't trademark Black Diamond, so I had to do a whole rebrand, and that was how Jessica Blair Beauty came about.
Mm.
But that was through my time working with Techtown, and then I used that grant money because, as you may know, filing a trademark is not cheap. So
No.
almost 2 grand of my grant money went straight to trademark filing,
Mhm.
and that got filed February of 2022, and I didn't get the official seal until this past fall in
Ye
2024.
it can be like that. There is so first, shout out Stephanie Hammonds, my attorney here with Detroit is Different for so many things, and I'm definitely not in the, I guess, dotting the I's and crossing the T's and checking the boxes like you. I color outside the line sometimes, so that's why you need attorneys, you
Yeah.
know? So, within that trademarking so people can kinda get the concept of trademarking. From the outside in, we would think it's blanketed, but trademarks have different usages. And depending upon what you're trademarking, hence Detroit is different because it has the name of a municipality in there. And it's like, I can't trademark Detroit and
Right.
then turn around and say, hey, Detroit Lions, I'm suing you,
Yeah.
you know? So, so it's different licensing usage. So trademarking for clothing is different for online, for what would be used for different styles of branding depending upon like a product. So it can become very litigious. That's the term I want to use in delivering a trademark and getting back the seal, depending upon what you're offering and how you're offering it, especially in the market that you're in.
Yeah.
Whereas it may be another person that's trademarking something in a whole different field for a whole nother reason. And they're like, I got mine back in 2 weeks. And it's
Mhm.
like, well, you're in a different world. It's a different scope, different feel. So I just want to share that with the audience that thinking about trademarking this. I have a couple people that sometimes will be like, "Hey, how you figure this out?" And it's like, well, attorneys.
Yeah. It took patience. I did have an attorney. I used, Trademark My Stuff.
Mhm.
That's the company name, but they helped me the entire way because that I do a lot of stuff myself, but when it came to that kind of stuff, I already knew that's outside my scope, and I'd rather just pay the professional to help me through this.
Okay. So now I guess let's get into where you're at now. Grand River. How did you choose that location? Why did you choose that location? And how's it been opening business?
So, once again, I gotta give y'all the backstory because I wasn't always gonna be West. So what happened was in 2021, initially, I did want a West Side location.
Mhm.
That was my goal. I wanted to be on the West Side, but I actually had somebody who approached me and was like, "Hey, we have a space. It's East, but we think it would be really good for the community. We like what you're doing, and we want to offer you, this space for a reasonable amount." And so, at first I was like, "Oh, okay, it's a good opportunity, but it's not really, what I had in mind." Like I don't know why, I guess my heart was just West. But I was like, "You know what? I'm open to it. I'm not gonna turn down opportunity. Let me just look into it." And so I started working with the building owner, and I had got architect drawings and all of this stuff done for the space because the space was like 5,000 square feet. I didn't need that much space. So I was
Pretty
gonna do a
big.
build out to block off like my 2,000 or 1,500, and then the rest, they could do whatever they want with the building. Well, I have been working with them for almost a year and a half. So about around that year and a half mark, when we were getting ready to do the build out, they approached me and they were like, "Hey, we don't want to do the build out anymore. Like, we just want to do suite style. So we want to leave the 5,000 square foot space, but we'll just put a few walls up, but we'll treat it like suite style." So kind of like if you want to picture like maybe like a Greenfield Plaza, something like that, where it's different spaces within this building. I told them, I said, "Well, I only came to this location because it was off a busy road." I said, "For my type of business, I can't do suite style." I said, "I need to be able where people can see it off the main street, where they see this name and it's an entrance. And then also the type of products I have in here." I said, "I just realistically can't even trust suite style. Like me having to have the same access into the building as other people. People might be in here all hours of the night. Like it just wasn't for my type of business." So that was a setback off rip because that was like a year and a half time I lost when I pulled out from them.
I would say, like all lessons in business, I often uplift this. A L is a lesson because that relationship between landlord and tenant and doing business and how we will share in this space as you conduct business in the space and the vision of what the owner and landlord has for it, that's something that you'll learn over and over and over and over again. And on all sides, it's back to relationships and how to pace things out, how to move forward. It's been so many times where we've seen like restaurants, even, will build out in the space for 3, 4 years and then ownership shifts and wants to go into a whole nother direction.
Yep.
And you don't know. And now you got a whole kitchen in the basement of a place where it's like, wow, now I got to figure out how to get all of this stuff either out this space
Yeah.
or try to sell it at pennies on the dollar to who's going to be in this space.
And I was just happy though. Honestly, I always say everything happened for a reason because it wasn't meant for me to be there. Because even during that time, the reason why it took so long to even get to that point is because they weren't really responsive. And
Mm,
so when I thought back, I'm like, "Jess, you should have probably pulled out from this a long time ago because like it would be weeks at a time. Like it would be important stuff I needed, and I wouldn't hear nothing for almost a month, over a month.
mm,
Like it was crazy." And so at first, I was a little bummed when that happened, but when I thought about it, I said, "Nah, you didn't need to be there because if they're not responding right now when
mhm.
for something simple like this, let something break, let anything happen in there, are you even gonna hear from them?" So I was alright once I, got past that point, and then I was like, "Okay, it's time to go back to the drawing board," and I ended up I went with another real estate agent. We viewed, I probably would say, almost over 50 properties in Detroit.
Mhm.
Like, I just could not find the one that I
Yeah.
wanted, and then I started working with Motor City Match, and fast forwarding to 2024, well, into 2023, going into 2024, my advisor from Motor City Match, something came across his desk, and he was like, "Hey, you need to check this out. Like, I think it looks nice. It just came available. Do you want to go see it?" So he sent me the address. I put it in my maps, and so one day I was on my lunch break from work, and I went and just rolled past it, and I pulled up, parked outside, and I looked at it, and I was like, "Yeah, this is it. Like, I want this one. Like, this is the space." And that was the Grand River location that I'm
That's
at
great.
now.
So people can kind of get the understanding, and Detroit is different. Has done some work with Motor City Match before, like years ago. And Motor City Match is a program from the Detroit Economic Growth Corporation, where we're essentially it's matching landlords and tenants, similar to the summertimes those challenges we spoke of. And in this match, other supplemental funding is provided. Some is paid back, some is given. But either way, the match between both are made where we can fill a lot of the vacancies because of those challenges between both and meeting the landlord with where they're at and the owners with where they're at. And that's the first iteration of how the program is built and developed, but now providing other supplemental support for many businesses along that way towards getting to that brick and mortar and opening that space. So now opening the store. What has it been like so far? How long you been open? You gave me your two products that are moving in the natural and the non-natural hair care space. But what has it been like for you to be in that neighborhood, and
Yeah.
how has it been to be, that person turning that key, owning that store?
So, I would first say I love the neighborhood. I've always loved Rosedale Park. I had actually did a few pop-up shops with Grandma Rosedale a couple years ago, like for
Mhm.
Small Business Saturdays. So,
Okay.
I love Rosedale Park. I signed my lease February of last year. So it's technically just now been 1 year of being in the space, but I didn't do the soft opening until November of 2024, this past November. And then grand opening was this past February. So February 21st was the grand opening.
Okay.
Um, but to get to the grand opening, once again, it was obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. To give people a little insight, because a lot of people don't know all the behind the scenes stuff that really went into Jessica Blair Beauty, even being able to cut that ribbon on February 21st. So, like I said, I got the space last year in February. I didn't start the work though, because it needed a build out. It used to be a bridal shop, but before she left, she had the floor like torn out, which I mean, I understand. To my understanding, she had a very nice floor put in, and I guess the landlord didn't want to give her some type of credits and stuff for all the updates. So, hey, I get you, sis.
I just remember, as I said, you put something in and you working things out.
Yeah, so I was like, I wasn't even mad at her. I'm like, I get it. You tore your floor out. I understand. So it didn't have a floor. The walls and stuff needed updates and patching because it was, like, all kinds of different stuff, I guess, that were once in the walls, but it was, like, all these holes and just not in best condition, and it was just some other things, like the light fixtures it was, really dark in there, so around July of 2024, that's when the build out started. Um, it was interesting working with different contractors, as many people probably know.
And let's be honest, working with contractors is always gonna be interesting. I like that term. Now it's even more interesting as there is so much development happening in and around Detroit specifically, but Metro Detroit at hand, but Detroit specifically. So a contractor now, meaning when it's all ebb and flow in business. We're entrepreneurs. So a contractor, when you talk to him on Saturday, he's ready to do the job. He doesn't have any other job, so he's ready. He got his best crew and everything's good.
Yep.
And then by next Saturday, he just got a car where he can work on the new building with, I don't know, God knows who. It's gonna be a new casino, and everybody, LeBron James and Jay-Z and Beyonce
Yeah.
and Leonardo DiCaprio are all coming to Detroit to buy into this casino. And now, even before that bid, he's writing in the scripts and trying to respond to the proposal, and he's got his nephew that just started doing floors, working on your floors. And you like, yo, man, what is going on here?
Were you in there? Did you did you see what was going
What
on?
is
Because
going
I'm
on?
like, for you to say that, you must have you must have knew exactly what was happening in there.
I'm just speaking because I've been in business a while. Like I say, the L's are lessons. These L's are lessons. And you be like, hey, what are you doing?
Yeah, that pretty much sums up though what exactly happened. Now, I will say this, they did a phenomenal job. Everybody who goes in there is looking like, "Oh my gosh, like it's so beautiful in here." But it's just they don't know all the behind the scenes of how it
Yeah.
came about. But it was issues like that where some things weren't getting done when I expected it to. It was
Mhm.
times where, I thought I was paying the contractor himself to do it, and then one day I just happened to pop up over there, and I saw 2 guys who looked like I didn't even know if they were 16. I really didn't know how old they were,
Mhm.
and he's sitting in the chair, scrolling,
Yeah.
watching them do the work, and I'm like, "You charging me top dollar. I'm thinking you're doing the work, and you got all these other people in here."
Yeah.
I don't even know if they of age to be doing this kinda work, but I
Hey.
left it alone.
And then it's also an art of pulling permits, who's licensed, and then everything that's changing with the code. It's arcs in the litigious way as we talk about that, more so the red tape to doing business.
Mhm.
Why oftentimes, and we talk about this in other programs on Detroit is different. The barriers of entry of conducting business leads to a lot of people say, okay, to do business and do build outs in Detroit, it takes a lot of the gap funding or the tax abatements that certain people speak to. I don't necessarily know if I agree to a lot of that. I think there are other ways of looking at the mechanics behind that. And now we're getting more into like a public comment discussion and a Detroit is different discussion. Either way, seeing those businesses come to life and you being open about sharing those experiences and providing that space even on this program can help people become a lot more aware and have more of a realistic expectation. And then you having that same tenacity and goal and drive through it, tip my hat, because it's definitely been a lot of interpersonal conflicts that have been arose.
Yeah, so aside from the contractor issues, because I had to actually get 2 different contractors, that was the other thing.
Mhm.
So it was some more work that still needed to be done, like the slat walls had to be put up. I got another contractor to do that, and then it was just like, same thing. "Oh, I'm coming today." Today comes, don't show up. "Oh, I'll be there Thursday at 10." I go up there, cancel my appointment, get there at 10. "Oh, can I come at 5:30?" So it was just that kinda stuff that just kept prolonging.
Mhm.
Then now the build out is done. Now it's time to start ordering, like, more of the inventory and all that kinda stuff. So what people don't know, I took a loss from the very beginning before I even opened my doors for the grand opening. I had paid a company for almost $20,000 worth of inventory. I believe after I finished doing the numbers with the attorney, he calculated it to be about 17 grand,
Mm.
that I still haven't got to this day.
Wow.
So, that's what I'm currently dealing with now still behind the scenes is working with him to try to recoup some of my money that I never saw either the services or the inventory for that. But that was around August of last year because I was supposed to do the grand opening last year. The original grand opening was supposed to be October 25th, and I had to cancel that because I didn't have on my inventory, and I just felt like, I don't wanna open like this.
Mhm. Yeah, you
Like
don't wanna you don't wanna leave that first impression
Yeah,
as not the full first
right.
impression.
And, and our people sometimes, they the hardest ones. It's like, y'all don't even know
Yes.
why it looked like this or what happened, the loss that
Yes.
I done took, and why it's like this.
Yes.
So I postponed it, and then around that same time, I wanna say September 29th, my truck got stolen.
Wow.
I went to a birthday party outside of Lafayette Towers, and it wasn't a lot of inventory, but I did have some inventory in there. I had a box
Mm.
that because I also sell on Amazon too. I had an Amazon store. I had a shipment that was supposed to go out that was already packaged, ready to go. Walk outside from this birthday party. I'm like, "Nah, I coulda sworn I parked right here."
No.
I walked up and down the street a couple
Mm.
times. I said, "Oh, my Jeep is gone." And as
Mhm.
y'all know, hate to say it, Detroit, Jeeps are a hot commodity, so they got me. So my Jeep got stolen. It had inventory in the back of it. This was yep, September 29th going into October. Because remember I said that original grand opening was
Mhm.
supposed to be October 25th. So now we talking the first hit of the inventory I haven't got yet. The little inventory I did have,
Mhm.
truck gone.
Yeah.
And then that same week, I cannot make this up, same week, the tenant upstairs from me who was opening the spa, she had hired somebody she thought was a licensed plumber/contractor. He didn't know what he was doing. He cut her radiator pipe. So I'm in the store working, trying to, get some stuff together. And I kept thinking, like, why do I hear water running? I'm thinking I'm tripping. I'm like, nah. So I turned the music back on. But then it was like it got louder. So I finally got up from where I was at. It's literally water pouring like down the walls from the ceiling
Mm.
into the back of my store. And mind
Wow.
you, I had just finished the build out, had just
I know.
so this is all the same week. Now at this point, I'm literally sitting here like, all right, God, it's me and you now. Because I'm only a strong soldier to a certain point. Like a truck gone, inventory gone, water is pouring in here. Like this can't be real. So a lot of people don't see
No.
this stuff at
No.
all. All they know is, oh, she ain't open yet. Oh, she was supposed to been open. Oh, what's going on? Well, it's a lot of stuff that don't get talked about behind the scenes. So after that, I did. I'll be honest. I reached a point where I kind of was just like, I wanted to just say, forget it. Like I literally was just like, I don't know what's going on right now. And that's why I love my support system so much because I remember my significant other, he was like, I was sitting over at his house. I was like sitting on this little like bench thingy, but it was funny because I was laying back, like just looking at the ceiling. And he came in there and he was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, nothing, just listening to the birds chirping, like just laying there." And he was like, "If you don't get up," I'm like, "For what?" Like, I can't even go over to the store. How I'm gonna get there? My truck is gone. The inventory I did have is gone. Like, mind you, I did have some inventory still in the store, but none of my
Now it's
shelves were
rained on.
none of my shelves were put up, and it was just so he made me get up. He drove me over there, and he started putting them shelves together. He didn't even know how to do this stuff, but he learned. He figured out how to put them shelves up, figured out how to we learned so much stuff from, like, all of these setbacks, and that's why now when I look back, I appreciate it so much because it's so much stuff I didn't know how to do that we both literally start teaching ourselves, and it's only gonna help us go further now.
Yeah. And shout out to him, shout out to you in that journey. Cause oftentimes, as I often tell people, and you came to one of our business breakfast clubs, and I know business breakfast clubs, me, Suzanne Clegg, you know Suzanne. It always works with me. And when I talk about entrepreneurship and my view of it is so different from my father, my grandfather, my grandmother, my mother. I I I feel guilty because I've seen it for so long. And even with seeing it for so long, being in it and being in those situations where it's like, boy, oh boy, it just like you say, it's like I can only laugh because
Yeah.
everything that could go wrong has went wrong.
Yeah.
Everything, and then you have to sit back and then have to gather yourself, figure out where the victories are, figure out when you got to pivot, when you got to dig your heels in. Who knows what the consistency is? And this is why I often say to people that the most successful people in business to me are not the people with the most money at all. It's the people that can stay in the longest
Mhm,
because it's about staying in the game.
mhm.
And when I speak that, I'm not saying it to motivate a person to do something as crazy as entrepreneurship. What I'm saying is that along the way, it is going to be like, okay, you're going to do those shelves. You figure out other ways to push this contractor here. Other ways to say like, okay, that plumbing mistake from this contractor, and then it's like, okay, the contractor has the insurance company, and then you're on the phone with their insurance company, and you're going through different things. How do you manage navigating that? 'Cause this stuff is not it's like on paper, it's a lot of stuff on paper. And then you start getting to real life of
Yeah.
testing that plumber's insurance that he probably hasn't paid in a long time, and it's some company out of Arizona where you're talking to somebody from India that's running their call center where it's like, "Look, yo, I'm supposed to open next week, so I need $10,000 right now for the damage that they provided."
Yeah.
And they're sending you to this person and that person and saying upload the photos and this, that, and the other. This is what entrepreneurship is. So, like,
It was
navigating those spaces and those pushes and those pulls can also be, as I say, it's in times of crisis comes the best opportunities. One of those opportunities is it brought you both together and it brought you a lot more courage yourself in that know-how.
yeah.
And hence, like when people say, okay, these new businesses or these people that have been in business for a long time got their guard up about everybody coming trying to do stuff because it's like, yeah, because when they started, they feel like they got taken advantage of early on. And I don't know if you remember when I said this in every business breakfast club. There's two types of people in this business world, I think, that you can do business with. It's people trying to make money off you.
Mhm.
There's people trying to make money with you.
Mhm. It is.
And it's way more people that are trying to make money off you.
It is.
They will charge you and you will go out of business and they'll just call you and say, man, I knew that probably wasn't going to work. And it's like, well, why the hell you charge me all this?
Yeah. That's how they do. That's why I'm really I don't wanna say skeptical, but I'm not too quick to make decisions on certain things because you can only imagine the amount of people that, reach out to me trying with
Oh, yeah.
proposals, trying to do stuff.
Yeah.
And it's not being funny, but it's also like you gotta understand what I've already been through and what I'm already aware. So it's like I have to be real cautious about, who I choose to do different business things with.
And then their scope to understand is how is that fitting into the money making mechanism of my operation? Because a lot of people want to do a lot of stuff in your business.
Mhm.
The last thing most people want to do is sell.
Yeah.
It's like, guess what? If you can sell, I got a job for you right now.
Yeah.
And they want to help with everything but that.
Yep. And then they want you to do all of the work. And it's like, no, 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 no. So like, it's only certain people that I do, do different things with. Or even like when I do event collaborations, like I have a really good friend who's also into business. She's been in business for almost 10 years now. So, we do different stuff together because we work well together. And we both kind of had the same mindset when it comes to stuff.
Yeah.
So that's why I be real cautious about like who I partner with, who I do stuff with, because at the end of the day, my name is everything. So if
Mhm.
I sign off on something or you know, then hosted this event and then it turned out to be a flop or just some sketchy stuff happened, I don't want that. I especially not where I'm at right now in business. So that's why I'm real cautious like of who I do different things with.
Well, I definitely appreciated the visit. I bought one. We're gonna buy some more gift cards soon because we're gonna give away some Jessica Blair gift cards through Detroit is different.
I love
So
that.
we want to pour in to keep that business going, keep that thriving and moving as we get to a close of this Detroit is different. So hit them with the location, hit them where they can buy, and then I got my classic questions.
Yeah, so location again is 18724 Grand River Avenue, and that's Detroit. The monuments that's easy to find are, like I said before, the Amoco gas station and the UPS store right on Grand River. It's directly across the street from there. Also, there's an online store, so I do get a lot of people from out of state who kinda just see it and they're like, "Oh my god, it's a Black-owned beauty supply store. How can I support?" The website is jessicablairbeauty.com. Um, not every product, though, that's carried in store is on the website, just like the most popular things that beauty products that most people want, are on the website. Another way is Beauty Go Go. I don't know if you've heard of Beauty Go Go yet, but Beauty Go Go is a local delivery service that's supposed to be like the DoorDash for beauty supplies.
Okay.
So Jessica Blair Beauty is on Beauty Go Go. It's an app, and you can just download it. If you're like in the middle of doing somebody's hair, or if you a stylist and you can't run out, you can literally order from Jessica Blair Beauty, and it's a DoorDash driver who or Uber Eats. I forgot which one they partner with that'll come and deliver it.
Okay.
And then social media handles is just at Jessica Blair Beauty on everything. No underscores, no nothing. Just Jessica Blair Beauty.
Okay. All right. Now, with that, classic Detroit is different questions. Your very first car, year, make, and model, year you got it.
A 2010, I believe, Ford Focus
Mm,
Silver. That
okay.
was my very first car.
All right. Where was the first place you went when you got it?
I don't remember. Probably one of my friends' house because I
Okay.
was, 16, something like that. So definitely, if I had to guess, I would say the very first place was one of my friends' house.
All right. You're the DJ at the end of the fireworks, Woodward and Jefferson. You get to play 2 songs. What songs you playing?
Okay, repeat it one more time.
You are the DJ at the end of the fireworks.
End of the-
You get to play 2 songs. What songs you playing?
I don't know. That's a hard one. It's the firework. Um, I don't know. I guess I would just say my 2 favorite songs, maybe.
Okay.
Y'all gonna laugh at me, but one of my favorite songs is "Nobody Does It Better" by Nate Dogg and Warren G.
Okay, that's old school. I wouldn't even think that you would
That's
have that in the
That's
I wouldn't
that's
even think
stay
that
in
would be
my
in the deck.
that stay in my playlist. I don't know why, but I love that song. And surprisingly, another song that is actually a Detroit song is Eminem, "Lose Yourself."
Mm,
I feel like that song that got me through a lot. Like when I be trying to motivate myself, and then when I really listen to the lyrics sometimes, when he talk about his life, like some of that stuff be real life obstacles to be like, all right, like now I feel like I could do it. Like I go
okay.
from crying and then I'm like, all right, I'm back. I'm ready.
All right. All right. You was ready for the rap battle. I'm with it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And G-Funk kinda a little bit of like
Yeah.
the Dr. Dre influence in both. I'm
Mm-hmm.
with it.
Yep.
Okay. Last question. You could rename Woodward after one Detroiter. Who would it be and why?
That's one Detroiter. I feel like it's so many. I don't know. Um, well, I guess I'm a little biased, but I love me some Cash Doll too, so I would give my kudos to Cash Doll.
There we go. Well, off kinda in the same neighborhood, just a couple blocks
Yeah,
up
that's what
off
I'm saying.
Dexter.
I love me some Cash Doll, so if I would be fine if they renamed Woodward after her.
Okay, I'm with that. I'm with that. We love Dexter, and we love this story. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. Peace.
Detroit is different. Detroit is different.